Yeah, so here we go, December 21st. So I hope you guys have started making your Christmas cookies and have all that stuff ready for Santa coming down the chimney. Bring in lots of art. Anyway, I cannot believe it is the end of December. So we have a few more calls left, but today we have a really wonderful call. We've got Douglas Fryer calling in from Utah. We have Jill Sokup calling in from Denver, and we have David Griffin calling in from just outside of Vail. So a little bit of housekeeping. On November 29th, for those of you who were here, you know that David wandered into the gallery and I made him come on to my Zoom call with me. So this is interview number 2 with David, but we decided to do something kind of interesting because you can go back and watch that interview where we talk about all his pieces. So with the thumbs up from Douglas and Jill, we decided to make David my co-pilot today. So he's going to kind of chime in and ask some questions as well. And we'll also look at some of David's work, but mostly I really want to talk to Douglas and Jill to start off. And then we'll kind of, at the end of these calls, I usually try to leave 5 to 8 minutes for the artists to talk to each other, but I'm going to leave a little more time at the end of this call for you all to really interact and talk about the work and talk about your inspirations and whatever you'd like to kind of talk about. A big part of these conversations is you all who are out there listening to us today. I would really encourage you to please use the chat and ask questions. I'm going to read those out loud every time they pop up. So we can get your questions answered too, and just share your comments and thoughts. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to just jump right in and we're going to start with Douglas. So hey there, Douglas, I'm going to put a spotlight on you. And here we go. You are up to bat, my friend.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
You what? Say it again.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for agreeing to be here. I always feel like as I'm watching artists on the other end that you are just like moments from bolting out your door. Big interviews are just your favorite thing, right?
And it's pretty nerve-wracking.
So you know what? So this is an interesting similarity that you have. Well, actually, I think kind of all 3 of you on this call. Douglas, you have your background in art and your degree in art and all that kind of stuff. You lived for many years the East Coast, and you worked as an illustrator, yes?
Yeah, growing up, we sort of bounced around a lot. Mostly, I grew up in the northern suburbs of Chicago, and a little bit in California, in the Bay Area, New Jersey. But yeah, I went to school at BYU here in Utah and got a degree in illustration. And then worked for a couple of years in New York, and then decided that I wanted to get a master's degree and went back to BYU to study under a specific professor, actually in a different department, and got an MFA in painting and drawing. Was newly married, and then we decided we could kind of live anywhere if we that we wanted. So we actually moved to Vermont, and we were there for 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that was really influential on sort of my sensibilities of being in a very rural area as opposed to New York or Chicago or the suburbs.
Yeah.
And really grew to love the landscape. And it was really there that I started to develop sort of a bit more of a focus, I guess.
Mhm.
And then in 2002, we moved here to Central Utah in another sort of farming community, very small, small town, beautiful old pioneer town.
So, okay, so two big things that I'd love to talk to you about. The first one I want to talk to you about is the atmosphere. And so, and the second thing I want to talk to you, and I think what I wanted to, maybe what I want to do is put a pin in my second question, because it's really a question for all three of the artists on this call today. David, you were an illustrator for years. You came along in very much the same way that Douglas is explaining. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you worked in illustration and were able to move into the fine art realm. And Jill worked at the Museum of Natural History, Nature and Science in a sort of a similar capacity. And so I think this is a really interesting thing. And so I'm going to say, let's put a pin in that, because towards the end of our conversation, I would love for the three of you to kind of address that as to, starting out in as a career in the arts and how you really make it work. And so financially, but also there is this really, really learning and just getting your chops, right? And so let's talk about that afterwards. What I really want to do right now, Douglas, is talk about, one, the inspiration for your work, but also I think it's interesting, and I'm going to screen share because the East Coast, and if people are familiar with like the Hudson River School artists and things like that, there is a definite kind of palette. And it's not that by law it's mandated, but it's visually, there's a palette. There's this sort of sense, and the air is thicker. When you come out west, the air is drier and dustier. And so it's a different thing. And what I'm wondering is if you would talk about with the work, does that, I know physically where you are, but also the atmosphere, how does that change your work?
Well, I'm going to answer with a little bit of a roundabout way. The reason to make a work of art varies from artist to artist, but really the value in any work of art is the authenticity of the expression, and that authenticity comes from drawing upon your most profound beliefs, those things that guide your thoughts, your actions. It guides the way you interact, with people and with the world. It shapes and molds your values, and if your art isn't about that, then what is it about? And so when you talk about atmosphere or any of the elements that go into the paintings, the paintings are certainly begun by acknowledging a response. That could be an emotional response, it could be an aesthetic response. It's something moves you. You feel that this maybe this view or this object or the combination of many things, or maybe it's the sounds and smells of a place that you're walking through. those things that stick in your memory from, last week or from your childhood. Those things kind of constantly feed what you do in paint. And so what happens in my paintings is that they begin by this emotional response to a place, for example, but that place may be like many other places I've been or experienced. And so when I paint, I'm not only painting that one place, I'm painting thousands of places
Yeah.
that feed it.
Uh-huh.
And so what in my work, I feel like it becomes not just a rendering of a specific place, but it becomes a conceptual space, an idea space, or it becomes a place where emotions can be expressed. So when you talk about atmosphere, yeah, there may be atmosphere, there's maybe virga, this rain that's evaporating before it hits the ground, or maybe it is, storm passing through, and I see the sky becoming mixed with the ground and the mountains. It that the sky, the atmosphere, the air isn't just leftover space from that's just a, it's just not a tree, it's the air around it, it's left over, it's a, secondary, but the air itself has substance, it's concrete and has weight. And
Mhm.
so I like to play with those things. And as I do, I'm again playing with ideas and memories, and I'm constructing a space, I'm inventing a space. And a lot of times the air becomes a vehicle to express those things. A veil that goes over something, it makes that thing become sort of ghost-like or spirit-like, or it obscures it. It becomes vague, ambiguous, and ambiguous things create mystery in our mind.
Mhm.
And it's those mysteries that make us contemplate. And I want my paintings to inspire contemplation of things that are just not only things that we see and we touch and we hold, but things that are metaphysical, things that are spiritual, things that are not time dependent, So we talk about motion or memory or, moving through space. Those kinds of things. So it's a difficult thing to say, well, it's just, the air back east is thicker and the air in the west
Yeah.
is thinner.
Mhm.
It's so much more than that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do a screen share, and and along these lines, and exactly what you're talking about with this, it is, and what you're saying and how you are creating these paintings and how, it's this total life experience, and there are many places, right? And it is sort of this authentic and emotional connection with the work. And it occurred to me that I feel like in my own just reading comments of artists, in particular abstract expressionists of the 40s, 50s, 60s, it is this same conversation, that there is this search by artists to draw out this authentic conversation, this
Mhm.
authentic work. And it may be based on all kinds of different things and how it shows up on the canvas or with what you're creating is your signature, it's your voice. And so let's do this. Let's look at the work. And I'm wondering if now, so based on what you just said, if you would talk about these pieces, and I've pulled up Deep Pasture August. And I think truly this is such a great jumping off point because when I look at your work, when I first saw your work, and I can't remember if I saw it in a gallery or if I saw it in a magazine many years ago, and I just, I really loved what you were doing. I loved how things were obfuscated in a way that allowed me to be present in that work of art, allowed me to daydream in that piece, allowed me to go somewhere with that work. And I think that's an interesting thing that happens with your paintings, because when people do talk about them, they talk about their own memories, which I think is really fascinating.
Yeah, these places, because they are not specific renderings of a place, they're more suggestions of a place, and created not only from observation, but from drawing upon memory and invention, and also the process of applying paint and then having this dialogue with the paint, that is just enjoyable as a painter. But what happens when if I only suggest that it's a ground plane, suggest that it's grass, suggest that it's tree, suggest that there's a breeze blowing through them, and it allows you as a viewer to become invested, because as you place yourself in it, you are invited to complete it.
Yeah.
And utilize your own memories and your thoughts. Your brain goes to work to say, what is that? Oh, this is or that must be a fence post, or that must be trees in the mist in the back, or and as you participate, you are invested, and you feel like it has value and significance to you.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this, and I think this is kind of a question for Jill and David as well, in a sense. Coming from a background when each of you started out as an illustrator, and this is, when you're an illustrator, you get a job, and your job is, you need to create this graphic for and to communicate this, right? When you are now and all three of you are doing this, when you are creating fine art, and this is you communicating from within you, is that harder?
Very different.
Yeah, tell us about that.
As an illustrator, and I was young. I was, ready and willing to do anything for a buck. I just didn't want to starve, and so I would take on a lot of any projects that were offered me. So I would do advertising work. I would do packaging. Editorial, just anything, and in any medium and any style.
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of hired to, for my skills, But I never thought, I'm really expressing myself, as I, you know, do a little, you know, pen and ink drawing of, I don't know, you name it, just a dog, a dog running through a yard or something. What do it has nothing to do with me or my life. Uh, I was never really invited to interpret much, you
Yeah.
know. And so, but I was an illustrator for, I don't know, 15 years, something like that, maybe 20 years. And it took about 10 years to make the transition from being an illustrator, that was supporting us, to actually being able to do my own work and have galleries interested in, have collectors interested in getting commissions to do exactly what I wanted to do. And so, now I can choose. This piece that we're seeing here is relatively more straightforward. It's a place. It's right on the Connecticut River. There was a week that several painters were invited to go to Charlie Hunter's place in Bellows Falls, Vermont, and we all painted together for a week. And this is a mill that's just down the hill from his studio. And this was December, and it was wonderful. And I've done several paintings of this, just different aspects and different compositions, just sort of searching and exploring the subject a little differently each time. And it's just really enjoyable. But there are other paintings that, that are also in this group that in this show. For example, At Dusk on the bottom, it's another sort of winter painting, but it is much more conceptual.
Yes.
It has to do with memory and passage of time and just glimpses of things, suggestions, the most minimal amount of detail to suggest, the thing. Maybe I'm on the highway racing past this farm, and I have a glimpse of this in the corner of my eye, but I remember it, I capture it, and I've got to express it. So the two, I can pick and choose now as a gallery artist, how I'm going to treat the subject. I'm not dictated by if that image has to read really quickly like an illustration, if it has to sell a product, if it has to pass through 4 committees, including the designer and the creative director and the client and the whoever it is, and then it comes back with changes that I've got to do. I can just say, I'm going to either be successful or failure on my own terms, but I'm going to be honest with it.
Yeah. When you're doing a painting that is more conceptual, like that farmhouse we just saw, or a lot of your work in the show, how do you do you mentally get into the work, just because you maybe have a concept, but how do you do this? Because you're not being told what to do or it's all you.
Well, I think once you start doing personal work, the last painting sort of feeds and gives you energy for new ones. And you don't want to repeat yourself, but the fact is that you find themes that you're interested in. And so you know, you may do a painting, for example, of maybe there's a little brook, and or you know, it's just running through a ditch and there's weeds, and you're really interested in that and you're painting it. But in the distance there's some farm fields, and those farm fields get painted in, but there's really kind of interesting patterns in them. And then you think, you know, I'd like to do a painting of just that, you know, just those patterns of fields. And so maybe the next 5 or 6 paintings you do, you know, just very graphic, sort of simplified patterns of fields. And then you think, wow, you know, I really like this bit of clouds that's above that mountain ridge. I think the next painting I want to do a bunch of cloud paintings. So instead of a landscape, I'm going to do a skyscape. And then see, each one feeds off of it. And then you sort of just go from one to another.
Yeah. Okay. I am going to stop our screen share, and I am going to pull up Jill. So hang out, because, or actually, David, do you have any questions you want to, my co-pilot?
Well, first of all, I'm very honored to be both here with both Jill and Douglas. And Douglas and I had a conversation back at Insight Gallery a year or two ago, and it was such an important conversation to me, because I had known Douglas's work. But one thing that I'm so impressed by in both cases, in Jill and Douglas, but since I'm talking to Doug, is the fact of people that don't know what we do assume that painting something, rendering something photographically, if you will, is the hardest thing you could do. But in Douglas's work, and even in Jill's work, when you try to capture an emotion, like both do, that's the most difficult part, because you're really undressing in front of everybody. And you're just exposing who you are. And I'm so grateful that Doug's on here, because I wanted to say you're a master at being able to leave the right amount of things in that mysterious space, so that people can find their way in there without being, as we are as illustrators, being given a script and it dictates, look over here. Look over there. This is the hero. But you do such a masterful job of creating spaces that people can walk in from all angles, from every angle, and they see this, and it has your name on the bottom, of course, and you are the artist. But the fact is that you're leading us and inviting us into spaces that allows us to think deeper about all kinds of things. So that's one thing I really appreciate about Douglas's work, that no one else does what he does in that regard, in my opinion. Invite you into a space and say, here, this is authentic and it's real to me. Does it matter to you? And when you get to do that, that's really special. That's just really special. To be, the door is wide open. It's not cracked open, it's wide open, and you can walk in and be there and enjoy those spaces. I've talked too much, but I wanted to say that about what I appreciate Doug's work. And I want to say something about Jill, but I'll let her finish first before I jump in for her, because there's a whole nother matter about Jill's work, the personality of her people, of her horses, animals, something I'm familiar with.
Yes. Okay, so thank you, David, for that. And it's something that I also kind of want to talk about, if we have time at the end, is that it's sort of this yin yang thing, right? That there's the wonderful positive freedom to be able to explore ideas and put them out there, and do this for a living, right? And then there's the other side of it, of putting so much of yourself out there. Well,
something that something that David said. I just wanted to expound on it a little bit. You know, that idea of you know, going into, you know, a personal expression of a place. It's unknown territory for the artist.
Yes.
It's a relatively easy thing to render something out from observation and have the forms, you know, look like the thing it's supposed to be, you know. Relatively easy. But it's relatively, you know, more difficult to go beyond it into a place where it has other meanings. It's like going out on a limb and then taking a leap of faith, and you just don't know where the painting's going. But it is vital to do that because the viewer is going to take a similar journey, maybe not the exact same journey, but they're going to take a similar journey in that painting. And those kinds of things can be challenging to some people. You know, things that are more abstracted feel less familiar, right? And so it's challenging a bit to the viewer. But if they give it a chance, it is so rewarding.
Yes.
Because they take that journey and discover territory, places that, you know, they never thought they would experience, and it's valuable to them.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, let me shine a spotlight on Jill. Hello, Jill. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Are you
Thanks
just
for
taking
having-
all this in? And yeah, just I'm glad. Thank you for not bolting out the door too, because I've been keeping an eye on you. I'm like any second now. Yeah, in case you all didn't know, some artists are really quite shy and don't love this part of, but anyway, Jill, I'm so glad you're here. And I love this glimpse into your studio because holy smokes, look at all the work that you just constantly have going on. Do you work on several pieces at one time?
Yes, I do. I primarily will focus on one through the majority of the process. And then there's other stages where I need to let it dry and then I'll get started on another one.
Yeah. So people keep asking me, well, you know, what do you think of the show? And is this a good show? And all this kind of like, of course it is. It's the best show. It's really amazing. And your paintings are some that I really point to when people ask me about the overall show. And I want all three of you to correct me if I'm off base with this, but there is a sense when you are in the show, when you are standing in these galleries surrounded by this art, there is a sense of calm and harmony, unlike any other show I have ever done. This is my 26th show. And it's so different. And I have some theories about that. And one is that you had, but through COVID, and there was that panic, right? Everything shut down. And then all of a sudden, like people are buying your art online and things, maybe they're going to be okay. But you essentially, every one of your deadlines, all of you guys, was just like, hey, punt, no deadlines. And I don't know if there was this, space that you all were allotted to actually explore and play and say, I've been wanting to try this, and I'm going to do that. And for me, I have this sense of your work, Jill, in particular, taking a leap forward. Did that happen?
I guess so.
You're in the middle of it,
Well,
if you're
no,
right. Yeah.
I you're right. There's definitely an abstract internal shift that I've felt. And I do agree that being in a situation where there were no openings to go to, really just being at home in a quiet and calm environment, at least fortunately that was my situation. And I do think that had a part of it. And I certainly relished not having places I had to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was also a shift in my thinking in terms of how I want to move forward with my work. And the one thing, and I think it was already moving there on my own, but I think the whole situation with COVID made it happen faster. And that was just trying to find more meaning in my work. And, Douglas talked so eloquently about authenticity. So I think there's a lot of it is just really discovering deeper levels of my own personal interests and really digging into them more. And I think that having that opportunity to not think so much about the deadlines and the business side of things allowed that to happen more freely.
Yeah, that's what I wondered with artists. Just pull the stress out of this, pull that ingredient out. What happens? So I'm going to screen share and I'm going to pull up your work here that we have in the show, and let's talk about that, and let's talk about it. I would love to talk about it in terms of that search for you, of what really matters to you and what is really authentic to you. And I'm starting with this painting White Duo, so I always tell people this, that uncrating and unwrapping work for the Coors Show is my Christmas. It is so magnificent. And this painting in particular was delivered with the rest of your works, and it was leaned up against a wall. And the way the light was hitting it, it was like this painting, and it's really quiet in a lot of respects, but it actually looked like it was plugged in. Like it was just emanating off the wall. And then I started putting all of your work in this sort of cluster in this area. And I'm like, there's something really different happening here. And it was when we unwrapped your work and really kind of laid it out that I started thinking, I think artists have been really given sort of a gift in a way to explore. And this painting is the one that really made me stop and go, wait a second, something is really different here. And I'm wondering if you would talk about this work in particular, talk about the inspiration of it, but talk about kind of what happened as you moved through creating this painting.
Well, I guess one of the shifts that's happening, well, let me backtrack a little bit. So a lot of the thinking and curiosities that I have about my life and the world we live in really has nothing to do with horses at all. And it has to do with what you mentioned earlier, really the yin and yang of our existence. And so really so much of the thinking and exploration that goes into my work really comes down to that core concept, and it extrapolates and expands in so many infinite ways. But just to keep it simple, that's a real core thought behind a lot of my work. But what the shift that's happening is I'm becoming and feeling more connected to the actual physicality of an animal, particularly horses. It's hard to explain because I honestly sometimes feel like I don't really know what I'm doing, and then I'll stand back and things have happened in the painting that work really well. And it's almost as if it's so hard to explain, but like, I'm very intentional when I'm painting it, but there's parts of it that feel like they're done in a frame of mind that I have no control over. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It actually makes complete sense to me. Yeah. Right, guys? Does that make sense? Yeah.
No question.
So with the animals, with the horses, there's this element of I get to see these animals in person. I get to touch them, and occasionally I get to ride them, and then spending time with them in conjunction with the people that own them and love them. I definitely have a more personal connection to them, and there's this desire for me to actually have the painting represent the animals in a manner where they're almost there with you. And there's a quality of when I paint them that I do actually feel that. I feel like they're almost in my studio, like breathing, and the warmth of their flesh and their personalities. So that's becoming part of the process that's new for me. Whereas before it was more focused on really those mechanical aspects of the painting. And yeah, I don't know if that answers your question about the process of the painting. But definitely there's a lot of layers and stages involved in it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you know what, David, I'm going to pull up another one, but if you want to also chime in about, you were talking about this relationship with the horses and.
Yeah. And I've been around a horse or two in my life, and cattle for that matter. But what I really, and I've seen the work, Jill, at the show. I've seen it hung, and it's beautiful. And I want to reinforce what you just said. The thing that draws me to these paintings in particular in years past is the fact that you are capturing a personality. You're making they're animated objects, but you're giving them a personality that's a magnet to me, that draws me to the painting when you do that. And you're really, and then I think also one thing I've noticed is that the big shapes, the big abstract shapes work. You can back up far enough where it's not a horse or a cow or the combination, but it's this nice shape that White Deal is just a magnificent painting. And you could see two humans doing that. You could see them nuzzling up to each other, and that aspect of that human aspect that you do such a wonderful job in. But I'm really grateful that I'm able to see these paintings in person, that they do make a difference to me. I know the horse, I've been around horses most of my life, but you capture a personality that I don't think many people, I hope they appreciate it, because I do.
So let me see, I'm going to grab this one, this buffalo. Let me grab this one right here. And take a look at this. This is a 30 by 30 young bull in blue. And this is another one that I really wanted to call attention to and talk to you about, because I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there's something about buffalo that seems to really capture your imagination, Jill. And I know that when you were young, you just always wanted a horse, and this was just such a big thing for you. But buffalo also, but in a different way. They really seem to, like, I get a sense that this is something that has captured your imagination enough that you want to paint it. But what is it about buffalo that, in particular, that is a subject for you?
It really comes down to just the textures and quality of their coats. Most of the time when I get to see them, it's springtime and they're losing their winter coat.
Yeah.
So it's just really, and each animal has a very unique pattern at the way that they lose that spring coat. And just visually, it's just beautiful abstract patterns that's created just through the coats of the animals. It's simple, but that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. It almost seems like too that horses are domesticated for the most part, and and buffalo are very wild. In fact, isn't it posted all over Yellowstone that, like, one of the most dangerous animals is the buffalo? People just assume they can go up and scratch their heads, and Right? I mean, there's something about that too, that I don't know, that just sort of draws you in. And as a painting, they make just such a really intriguing subject matter, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very agile, very fast animals too. You wouldn't think that, but
Yeah.
yeah, and I think a lot of it too is just situational for me. I get to go to Zapata ranch lands, and they have a herd of about 2,500 bison, and just having the ability to be there and go see them. And most often they're right up there on the road, and you can get very close to them. So I think a lot, like, I think if I wasn't there and I'd never seen a buffalo, it's not something I would have sought out. It was sort of a circumstantial
Yeah.
gift, I suppose.
Yeah. Hey, let me read a comment from Blake, and then I've got a follow-up question to that. But Blake writes, I keep wanting and deleting to comment that I love hearing all of these artist philosophers. Then I realized it's not a distinction between the two, but a realization that all of these artists are truly visual philosophers. Thank you all. Very rich. Yeah. Yeah, that's an excellent way to put that. I really agree with that. So when you are, and this is probably in a way, a question for everybody, but when you are contemplating subject matter, does there have to be a personal connection?
Yes, most definitely.
And how is that? And how, like, because again, if we're kind of talking about the yin yang of this, and the personal connection, so you can stand outside of it and say, I personally took a picture of this and brought it back to my studio and recreated a painting. Or you can say, I have an emotional connection to this, which I think is what all three of you are saying in different ways.
Yes, that's Jeff on Ace, and the dog is Curtis. So yes, there's that personal connection of actually having met and interacted with these people and these animals. And I think for me too, the evolution of my work has been the longevity of these relationships. So this actually was an image that I took, I think in 2012. And
Wow.
none of the animal, that horse, Jeff and the dog are no longer at the ranch, but there's still that imprint of that moment of meeting them, and the history of conversations with Jeff. And I love his horse, Ace. He's just one of my favorite horses to paint. So yes, there's definitely very much a personal connection, but I have to say that took time to develop. And when I first started painting for my references from the ranch, I have to say it really was more of a mechanical, business-like mentality, producing artwork for a show. And it was all about the structure of the painting. And but I think that's, again, goes kind of back to that shift that you think has happened with my work, is there's this connection with it that's taken many, many years to develop, but now it's finally sinking in and starting to come out through my work.
Are there, and this is maybe a question for all three of you, are there paintings that, are there paintings that you're not ready to paint yet? Does this happen like where do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, yeah, there are things that you want to tackle, but you're not ready to yet, or is that a thing?
Yes.
I
And
think,
I have several sketches hanging in my studio of paintings that I want to do, maybe, but for whatever reason, I don't have the confidence, or I'm looking at one right now, or there's just something not quite right with it. But then at one moment, suddenly, for whatever reason, it becomes valid and the time is right to create it. And some of these things in my studio have been around for over a decade. And like that, actually, one of the painting you just showed is something I've been contemplating for probably at least 7 or 8 years.
Wow. Wow. So how do you deal with that as an artist? Do you just like, hey, I'll get to you, I'm not ready? What happens there?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And just each time I revisit the original image or the concept, if I keep coming back to it, there's something that's drawing me to it. But there's also a little bit of a stop that's like, I'm just not quite ready. Part of it might not be working entirely. There might be, I'm not sure I can pull it off. But it's usually those pieces that I keep returning to that are sometimes some of my favorite and probably most successful.
Wow. Douglas, you kind of talked about that a little bit too, about how you will keep sort of returning to a same scene and finding something different in it. Is that so? Is there something to that?
As Jill was talking, it just reminded me of this. I guess this idea that I've had that as artists, we are constantly, every day, almost every moment, we are chasing a very elusive idea that rests right in the back of our skull. We're just, it's so elusive. We know what it feels like. We have, an idea of what it would feel like if we painted it, but sometimes, sometimes we're able to capture it quickly. It eludes us for a bit, but then we come to a resolution in the image, and we say, it's resolved, or at least it's at a point of that it's acceptable to us. We've grown to love that image and learn from it and respond to it. And if we did one more stroke, it wouldn't be resolved anymore. We would have to go to another step. But other things, we know what it would take to finish that piece that's been on our wall for a decade. But we have to learn more. And we'll know what it is when we get to that point, and then we say, oh, that's it.
Yeah.
We can do it.
Yeah.
So all three of you, and so we're kind of getting up towards the top of the hour here, and but all three of you came from an illustrative background in various ways, and for various years that you worked creating, because you have great skill and you can do this, and you built up a toolbox, right? I'm wondering if you would talk about moving away from that and just purely becoming an artist in an authentic way. And I'm wondering, is that a calculated thing? Is it scary? Is it a relief finally? What is that? What is that? David, I'm wondering if you would.
Well, my art life paralleled a little bit with what Douglas talked about being an illustrator. Fortunately, I got the real blessing of being able to study with three of my illustrative illustrator heroes, Bernie Fuchs, Mark English, and Bob Peake, and got to study with those people over a period of time. And what I appreciated about that now, but I didn't then, was the fact that these guys were fine artists. They were just called illustrators because they were working. Bob Heindel, for instance, I show up, he's working on the back of a canvas. He's not working on the prime side. He's working on the back side. He's working on the raw Belgian linen, doing these ballerinas. And I thought, well, nobody's doing that. And then I go to Mark English, and he's doing these collages. And even in his later life, even the day before he passed away, he's doing these magnificent paintings of these collages of these houses that are tilted and got these. My point is, these guys were fine artists, and they let us be, and they made a living being an illustrator, but they let us. I got a glimpse into that, and that was such an encouraging thing to see. Unexpected, but encouraging. Back to, I want to say one thing about what Jill was talking about a while ago about having a painting, and Douglas did too, about having a painting and look at it. And I can appreciate that in so many ways. One thing that it affects me, and Douglas talked about that earlier, was you go to a scene and you think this is the hero. Here's what I want to paint, but now it's got all these other elements. So I'll do these studies and I'll put them on the wall. Next thing I know, the hero becomes the support to the clouds. Then I become more interested in another element of the painting that I wasn't even interested in initially. But as we grow and we look and our eyes the vision becomes more clear, that's the painting. I thought I was out there for one reason. Here's the real reason I was supposed to be out there. So that helps me when I look at things like that. I get a second chance, and the second chance is usually better than the initial idea.
Yeah.
Is it a sense that once you get going on a painting, that it's now a leap of faith in a way, that if you try to shoehorn it into this idea, you just make something, or you ruin something, or maybe it's just going to be mediocre?
Both. I've ruined more paintings than I can say, than I count, it, for the very reason of trying to say, well, this is what I've got to paint. This is what drew me. And then it's like Robert Henry said, we go out on location looking for the hero, the fireworks. We've walked by 16 or 20 paintings on the way to finding that one spot. We've walked by 20 paintings, and we've neglected really what was there, the beauty that was there. So that's what I appreciate, being given a second chance to relook at something, revisit it, redigest it. And then it becomes not a forced thing. Yeah. It seems more authentic to me at that point.
Jill, I feel like you were about to say something, and I think I cut you off.
Oh, I just sort of the idea that so much of the work chooses you.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Hey, everybody listening, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And artists, thoughts and comments for one another. And I'm going to zip it for a few minutes here and let you guys chat.
I just want to say that for me too, it's an honor to be sitting here virtually with you, Rose, and Douglas and David. So thank you.
Amen to that, Jill.
Yeah.
It's this, we don't get to do this enough.
Yeah.
I don't get to really talk to people that I believe and trust, and in a way, well, not in a way, but admire and respect and have a deep connection to. And that's so, I miss that, and I don't have enough of that. So Rose, thank you for doing this, because you're offering all of us more than just a chance to look at each other's work. There's really some connections going on here, as I see it in my own mind anyway, in my heart, that are very valuable.
I absolutely agree that, being an artist is a very solitary endeavor, for the most part. Not with every artist, but for most, we spend a great deal of our lives alone in our studio, putting paint on a surface and trying to make something meaningful out of marks of paint on a surface. it's amazing to me that we as painters find so much common ground in our experience.
Amen.
And it's not just painters. I can talk with writers or composers or, dancers, or whatever art you can name, and they go through the same things, trying the best they can to find the best vehicle, to make something concrete that that is in a foreign language, that we don't quite totally understand, and then expect someone else to understand what we're saying. And yet, even though we don't know what we're saying, we all look at each other after experiencing the art, whether it's the painting or the music or the dance, and we say, I understand you. I get it.
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wanted to say a point to Douglas when you were talking about authenticity, and but I don't think that's just an artist thing. I think one of the things that we can communicate through our work and just by being who we are is that, and that everyone has that ability to find those things that spike curiosity, or their history and their background and their experiences. And those are the things that form who we are as artists, but just as anyone can apply that to the choices that they make and how they choose to live their lives.
Yeah. Yes.
I think in so many ways, I want to tell you all that this is such an honor for me to have the time to talk to you, because I'm a great admirer. And so just to hear what's behind the work and what's happening in your studio and all that kind of stuff is always inspiring to me. I'm constantly, as you're talking, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to write about that. I'm going to write about that, because it's just, there's so many things that you talk about that are universal to humankind, whether you're creating or just, maybe you're just cooking a meal for your family at night, right? They're just these things that make life really joyful and worthwhile and something that we share. And so I just want to tell you all that, thank you very much for agreeing to do these talks and agreeing to be so open and truly authentic about what you're doing and why you're doing it, because I think there's just such great value in that. So anyway, thank you all so much. And we are over the hour as always. Just a bunch of thank yous from people. Thank you for sharing the stories. And then just truly, Blake, mentions a few illustrators, and really, illustration is just such a great launching pad for an artist to really dig into their own heart and soul and be able to put that out and share truths in a way and a lens for all of us to look through and see the world in an honest, but also even more beautiful way. So anyway, it's really a gift to know all of you. I want to thank you. I want to wish everyone a happy holiday. Looking forward to seeing you in the new year. And with that, I will say goodbye and any last words, and then we will once again close it out.
Thanks, Rose.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Douglas and Jill. I'm so grateful to be here and get to listen to valuable things. Thank you.
Back at you.
It's I hope to talk with you all in person soon. So.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Rose.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. You all take care. Have a happy holiday. Talk to you soon.
So long.
Bye.